30 years ago, a team of mathematicians in Jerusalem claimed they'd found something impossible. A hidden code buried in the Hebrew Bible, embedded so precisely that no group of human authors could have coordinated it by accident. It became a worldwide bestseller. It got a formal rebuttal in a scientific journal. And the way it finally fell apart is one of the best true detective stories in modern skepticism, which matters right now because a very similar claim is going viral again, this time with an AI standing in for the mathematicians. You may have seen the newer version already. Various video claims that Elon Musk's AI, Grok, was fed every prayer in the Bible and found a hidden 4-step code encoded by 40 authors across 15 centuries, verified down to the mathematics, proven with lottery odds certainty. It names a Stanford professor whose hands shook, a student who called at 3 a.m., a researcher who quit her career over what she found. None of it happened. There's no such professor, no such study, no such data anywhere. It's a well-made piece of fiction wearing the costume of science. But here's what's strange. This isn't the first time this exact shape of claim has swept through public conversation, and the earlier version is worth knowing on its own terms. What actually happened in the 1990s? In 1994, a mathematician named Eliyahu Rips, working with 2 colleagues, published a peer-reviewed paper in a respected statistics journal claiming that when you search the Hebrew text of Genesis using a method called an equidistant letter sequence, starting at a letter, then skipping a fixed number of letters each time, the names of famous rabbis lined up with their actual birth and death dates far more often than chance should allow. Rips wasn't a fringe figure. He was a serious academic at Hebrew University, and the paper went through genuine peer review. Then a journalist named Michael Drosnin got hold of it, and the story got away from everyone who started it. His 1997 book, The Bible Code, took Rips's cautious academic claim and turned it into prophecy. He said the hidden text had predicted the assassination of Israeli Prime Minister Yitzhak Rabin, and that he'd personally tried to warn Rabin a year ahead of time. He said it named the Kennedy assassination, Princess Diana's death. He even floated the idea that whoever encoded the message might have been time travelers. The book hit the top 10 bestseller list in New York, London, Paris, and Rome simultaneously. Rips himself came out publicly and said he did not support Drosnin's conclusions. One of his own collaborators went further, calling the predictive claims absolutely unfounded, with no scientific basis behind them at all. The scientist said, "This isn't what I found." The public heard, "Scientists proved the Bible predicts the future anyway." Then came the test that actually settled it. A mathematician named Brendan McKay wanted to know whether this pattern was genuinely unique to the Bible, or whether the same method would find impossible coincidences in any sufficiently long book, if you searched hard enough and only reported the hits. So he ran the identical method on other long texts that had nothing to do with Scripture. Tolstoy's War and Peace, Melville's Moby Dick. He found the same kind of coincidences sitting inside both of them. The technique that supposedly proved the Bible was written by God worked just as well on a novel about a whale. In 1999, McKay's team published a formal rebuttal in the same journal that had run the original paper. The consensus, once people checked the math rigorously, was that the pattern wasn't statistically meaningful, because you can find this kind of thing in any long enough text if you don't lock in your rules before you start searching. Statisticians call this trap the multiple comparisons problem. Search a big enough space of possibilities, and you will always find something that looks impossible, purely because nobody is counting the millions of times it didn't work. That's the real story. No supercomputer verification, no mathematical proof of divine authorship. Just a serious claim, a viral distortion of it, and a careful test that took the distortion apart. It's worth sitting with how tidy that ending is compared to the version circulating now. Drosnin and Rips were even jointly awarded an Ig Nobel Prize in 1997, the tongue-in-cheek honor given each year for research that first makes people laugh, then makes them think. There was a real paper trail, real names willing to be quoted disagreeing with each other in public, and a real rebuttal anyone can still go find and read. The AI version offers none of that. No professor you can look up, no paper you can request, no researcher who quit academia and left so much as a trace anywhere. When a claim this dramatic can't produce a single verifiable name behind it, that absence is itself the answer. So, what's actually left once you clear the noise away? Not a code, not an algorithm's discovery. Something much more ordinary and I'd argue more useful. A pattern in how people pray in these ancient stories. One that readers, rabbis, and pastors have pointed to for centuries, long before anyone thought to run scripture through software. If you read the prayers recorded across the Hebrew Bible and the New Testament back to back, not analyzing them with a machine, just reading them as stories, you start to notice something. The prayers that precede the most dramatic turning points tend to move through a similar shape. Not identically, not mechanically, but recognizably. I'll describe it here in 4 movements, because that's a natural way to talk about it, without claiming any of it was secretly encoded or mathematically proven. It's an observable habit of these prayers, and a genuinely useful lens for your own. 1. Starting with who you're speaking to, not what's wrong. In 2 Chronicles, King Jehoshaphat learns that 3 armies are converging on his kingdom. By any military logic, he has no chance. When he prays in front of his people, he doesn't lead with the crisis. He opens by describing the character of the God he's addressing: power over every nation, strength nothing can resist. Only afterward does he name the actual threat, and even then he frames it as something faced together rather than alone. The armies turn on each other. His people spend 3 days gathering the plunder left behind instead of fighting. You see this shape across the Psalms constantly. Many of the laments, even the most anguished ones, open with an address to God's character before moving into complaint. Psalm 63 opens with a description of longing and thirst for God before a single specific trouble is named. Scholars who study the Psalms have long noted this movement from orientation to disorientation to reorientation. It isn't a secret formula. It's simply how ancient prayer tends to move. Name who you're speaking to before you name what's wrong. There's a reasonably intuitive reason this might matter beyond ritual. A mind that starts by fixing on something steady and large tends to arrive at the actual problem from a calmer place than a mind that starts already inside the panic. You don't need a hidden mathematical signature to notice that. You can notice it the next time you try praying, journaling, or even just talking something through with a friend. And pay attention to where you start. 2. Asking for something bigger than yourself. Consider Hannah in 1 Samuel, grieving her inability to have a child for years. When she finally prays at the temple, her request isn't simply, "Give me a son." She vows that if she receives one, she'll give him back. Dedicate his life to a purpose larger than her own longing. She has Samuel, who becomes one of the most significant figures in the biblical narrative. Solomon does something similar in 1 Kings. Offered nearly anything he could want, he doesn't ask for wealth or long life. He asks for wisdom to govern well, a request oriented toward the people he's responsible for. The text says that because he asked for that, everything else followed anyway. This isn't a mechanical formula either. It's closer to a recurring value these narratives keep returning to. Prayer that reaches beyond the self toward some larger good is treated, again and again, as prayer with weight behind it. 3. Holding a request loosely. The most striking example sits in Gethsemane. Facing something almost unbearable, the request is completely honest, "Let this suffering pass," and then immediately it's held open. "Not my will, but yours." That's not resignation. Read in context, it's closer to what's sometimes called radical acceptance today. Full honesty about what you want, paired with a willingness not to grip the outcome so tightly you can't move forward without it. Elijah shows something similar in his exhaustion after Mount Carmel, collapsing under a tree and admitting he's done before anything is resolved. Job wrestles his way toward it only after chapters of protest, argument, and refusing easy answers from his friends. The surrender in Job is not quick or clean, and the text doesn't pretend it should be. It's a thread you can trace across very different books, written centuries apart, by writers with very different lives. Not because someone encoded it, but because honest prayer seems to keep arriving there on its own, usually after a long detour through everything that isn't surrender first. 4. Not stopping after one attempt. The last movement is persistence, not frantic repetition but staying with something over time. Elijah, praying for rain after a long drought, sends his servant to check the sky 7 separate times before anything appears. Daniel, in one of his visions, prays for 3 weeks before describing any kind of answer. Anyone who has prayed through a genuinely hard season recognizes this shape without needing a Bible in hand. The middle stretch, where nothing visible is happening, is usually the hardest part to stay in. These stories don't pretend otherwise. They simply keep returning to the idea that the waiting itself seems to matter, even when it feels wasted. It's worth noticing what these narratives don't say, too. They don't promise that persistence guarantees the specific outcome you're hoping for, on your timeline, in the form you imagined. Elijah's servant checks 7 times, and even then what appears is a cloud the size of a man's hand. A small, almost anticlimactic beginning, not a dramatic instant resolution. Daniel's answer, when it finally comes, arrives alongside an explanation that the delay itself had a cause he couldn't see while he was waiting. The texts seem more interested in describing what persistence does to the person praying than in promising what it guarantees from the world. What this actually is and isn't. None of this needed a supercomputer to find, because none of it was hidden. It's sitting in plain sight, and people have pointed to versions of this shape for a very long time. Sometimes as 4 movements, sometimes as 3, sometimes described completely differently. There isn't a single canonical protocol, and it's worth being cautious of anyone claiming these 4 steps are a definitive, mathematically certain formula for getting a prayer answered. Scripture doesn't present it that way. Plenty of prayers in the Bible follow none of this shape and are still treated as heard. Plenty of long, faithful persistence in these stories doesn't end in the outcome hoped for. Job doesn't get his children back. Paul, by his own account, asked 3 times for a specific suffering to be removed, and it wasn't. What you can honestly say is narrower, and I think sturdier. Across a wide range of biblical prayers, written by different people in different circumstances across a very long span of time, you can notice a recurring instinct. Orient yourself to something bigger than the crisis before naming the crisis. Let your request reach past your own interest. Hold what you want without gripping it so hard you can't keep moving. And don't expect one attempt to be the whole story. That's not a hidden code cracked open by artificial intelligence. It's something older and, in its own way, sturdier. a habit of prayer that keeps reappearing across centuries because people kept finding independently that it was worth returning to. Maybe that's the actual reason this pattern shows up in text after text without any of the authors coordinating with each other. Not because a code was planted for future computers to find, but because these are simply some of the honest, repeatable moves the human heart makes when it's asking for something it can't secure on its own. Orienting towards something larger than the fear, reaching past pure self-interest, loosening the grip on a specific outcome, and staying at it instead of walking away after one try. People across very different centuries and circumstances kept landing on a similar shape for the same reason people across different cultures independently discovered the wheel, or the lever, or the arch. Some solutions are simply available to anyone who keeps trying honestly, without anyone needing to whisper the answer to them. It didn't need a fabricated study, an AI, or a hidden mathematical signature to be worth your attention. It was already worth it, sitting in the text, waiting for whoever was willing to read closely enough to notice.